Okay, so we are starting our unit on poetry, and poetry is a collection of words, right, that expresses an emotion or an idea, sometimes with a specific meaning, sound, or rhythm that the poet wants to express, right? Poems can rhyme, they can be short, they can be long, they can be about any topic, and their purpose is to either entertain, describe, or inform us, okay? And there are different types of poems, okay? So let's take a look at the various types of poems. There are different types of poetic forms, but we are not going to be able to discuss all of the different types. There are over 25 different types of poetry. But we are going to be looking at limericks, which are really funny, haikus, which are short, the free verse, sonnet, and ballads, narrative poetry, odes, as well as diamante poems, okay? Alright, so let's have a deeper look into what these poems actually are and what they look like. Here is limerick. As I said before, limericks are funny poems. A limerick has 5 lines. The rhyme scheme is usually AA, B, A. That means is lines 1 and 2 and 5 rhyme. That's with the AA, B, A. And lines 3 and 4 rhyme. So line 1, line 2, line 5, and then line 3 and 4 rhyme. Okay, and as I said before, limericks are really funny. They tell a story, although the story is really short, with a twist at the end. Okay. Next is a haiku. A haiku is a poem that has a subject matter that's normally focused on either nature or the seasons, winter, spring, summer, fall. And haikus normally have 3 unrhymed lines containing 5, 7, and 5 syllables. So for example, spring is really here. Flowers are starting to bloom. Sunshine fills the air. Now when I say that they have lines that contain 5, 7, and 5 syllables, this is what I mean. 5 syllables. Spring is really here. So if you were to put your hand under your chin, and as you say each word, you count the number of times that your hand drops under your chin, and that is that is a clue that you have just used another syllable. So there are 5 here. Flowers are starting to bloom. There are 7 syllables in this particular line, and sunshine fills the air. Sunshine has 2 syllables, fills 3, the air, 4, 5. So that's what it means when it says that the 3 lines contain a pattern basically of 5 syllables, 7 syllables, and then 5 syllables again. That's a haiku. Next is a free verse poem. A free verse poem does not use rhyme or patterns. It's just free, just like what's in the name, right? And it can vary freely in the length of lines, the number of stanzas, and the subject. There isn't a requirement. There are no restrictions on free verse poems, okay? And this is an example of one called Revenge. When I find out who took the last cookie out of the jar and left me a bunch of stale, old, messy crumbs, I'm going to take me a handful and crumb up someone's bed. If you notice, that particular poem does not rhyme. As it says here, a free verse poem does not rhyme or use patterns or have that A, B, A pattern like what we saw, okay, in the limerick, right? Narrative poems tell a story that includes characters, a setting, a problem, and a solution. I'm sure you never thought that you would see that in a poem. We know that we see that in our fictional reading that we do together in class, but there are such things as narrative poems, and they have some of the same elements as our fictional stories. Next, we have traditional cinquain poems. A cinquain is a poem that's written in 5 lines that do not rhyme. Here's another poem that doesn't rhyme, right? It has 22 syllables, okay? And the pattern is line 1, there are 2 syllables. Line 2, there are 4. Line 3, there are 6. Line 4, there are 8 syllables. And line 5, there are 2. So as you can see, this particular type of poem has a lot of rules to it, right? For it to truly be called a cinquain. So for line 1, there must be 2 syllables. You can put your hand under your chin again if you would like to count along with me. Oh, cat. How many times did your chin drop? It should have been 2. Are you grinning? Your chin should have dropped 4 times. Curled in the window seat. It should have dropped 6 times. As sun warms you this December, should have dropped 8 times. That one you may have to repeat that one again to yourself, right? And then morning. Okay, so again, the traditional cinquain poems, those are a little more strict on what they actually require in order to be considered a cinquain. Okay, now I wanted to show you that cinquains are a little bit different. There are different ways that you can actually identify and or write cinquain poems. I just showed you one way. This is a different way. On this particular one, we're not going to be using syllables. We're going to be using words. And line 1 would be the title, which would be 1 word. Line 2 would be descriptive words or adjectives. There would be 2 of them there about the title or the subject. Line 3 would be your action words. A verb is a word. It's an action word. So you would choose 3 verbs that tie back again to your title or your subject. And then line 4 would be your feeling phrase. And that phrase must consist of 4 words. And then line 5 would be a synonym for the title. The 1 word that you used up here, you would come right back down here and you would add a synonym, meaning a word that means the same thing or close to the same thing as what you wrote on line 1. Okay? So that's another way that you can write a cinquain poem, or you might see a cinquain poem being written. Now we've looked at just a few of the different types of poems, right? And so now I want us to kind of switch gears and look at the parts of a poem. Poems have lines, stanzas, and what we call a refrain. A line is a single row of words in a poem. A stanza is a group of lines in a poem that are separated from each other by a space. And a refrain is a phrase, line, or stanza that is repeated throughout the poem. And as you can see here, there's an example of each. Okay? Next, I want us to look at the elements of poetry. Now, as we've looked at these different poems, and as you are going to be writing your poems, authors use sound devices or elements to help bring their message and their poems alive, right? And so they use what we know as figurative language. They use personification, onomatopoeia, alliteration, imagery, similes, metaphors, right? And again, they use repetition. They repeat sounds, words, or phrases again, right? And some poems have rhythm and some have rhyme, okay? And so, I want for you to take a listen at this poem that I'm going to read called Be Glad Your Nose is on Your Face. And I want you to see if you can figure out the type of poem that it is and possibly how many stanzas, how many lines you see, are there any refrains, does it rhyme, and does it use any of these elements, okay? Oh, be glad your nose is on your face, not pasted on some other place. For if it were where it is not, you might dislike your nose a lot. Imagine if your precious nose were sandwiched in between your toes. That clearly would not be a treat, for you'd be forced to smell your feet. Your nose would be a source of dread, where it attached atop of your head. It soon would drive you to despair, forever tickled by your hair. Within your ear your nose would be an absolute catastrophe. For when you were obliged to sneeze, your brain would rattle from the breeze. Your nose instead, through thick and thin, remains between your eyes and chin. Now paste it on some other place. Be glad that your nose is on your face. So when I look at this, I can tell that there are 5 stanzas. And I want you to look at a stanza like a paragraph, right? And so we know paragraphs are made up of sentences. Well, stanzas are made up of lines. So in stanza 1, there are 4 lines. Stanza 2, there appears to be the same amount. 4 lines for stanza 3. This will be stanza 4, and this will be stanza 5. So there are 5 stanzas. Well, how many lines are there in this poem? There are 4, 8, 12, 16, 20 lines in this poem, okay? Now, when I ask myself, does this poem rhyme? Absolutely it does. It rhymes. We look at face, place, not, a lot, nose, toes, treat, feet, dread, head, despair, hair, be, catastrophe, sneeze, breeze, thin, chin, place, and face. Okay? Now this particular poem, as I said before, does rhyme, right? So it's a rhyming poem, okay? So what you guys are going to do now is take your turn. You've just listened to me share my thoughts on Be Glad Your Nose is on Your Face. And now you are going to choose one of the poems below, the runny nose or the warning. And you're going to identify at least 3 elements that you see in the poem. Okay, you can talk about the number of stanzas, the number of lines, right? If there are any refrains, if there are any sound devices, any onomatopoeia, personification, similes, metaphors, things of that nature, right? So you're going to add all of your noticings about the elements of the particular poem that you are choosing. And you're going to add that in your text box. Be very, very mindful to add the title of the poem so Ms. Johnson will know exactly what poem you are reading today, okay? And so, both of the poems are pretty funny. Our theme today is noses. I'm sure you can probably tell, and you will be able to see. So all of our poems today deals with our noses, all right? So, again, when you are putting your anchor charts in your journal, please make sure you give it some pizzazz, give it some color, Okay, and good luck. I'll see you in a little bit.